What's up, everybody? This is Omar from MyPianoLessons.net. Thanks a lot for checking out this video. This is lesson number 2, and what we're going to talk about is piano scales. We're going to learn all about piano scales. Now, if you haven't watched the first video called Learn Piano Notes, all about learning what the piano notes actually are, you can check that out at MyPianoLessons.net or just on the YouTube channel here. So what's a piano scale? Basically, a piano scale is a group of keys on the keyboard or on the piano that sound good when you play them together one after the other. So, a scale is a group of notes that sound good or harmonious when you play them one after the other. Okay? There's a bunch of different types of piano scales. Actually, every note on this keyboard has its own piano scale. And it's sort of straightforward to figure out what each of those scales are. Now, when you're learning piano scales, there's one thing that you have to keep in mind, that you have to learn about, and that's intervals. Intervals are basically stepping from one spot to the next, like going from one key to another key is based on a series of intervals. There's two different types of intervals. There's whole steps and there's half steps. Now, a whole step is when you move to another key and you skip one key in between. So if I went from the C to the D, that would be a whole step because we're skipping this C sharp slash D flat key. We're skipping this key and we're moving from the C to the D. That's a whole step. So a whole step is moving from one key to another key while leaving one key in between them. A half step is pretty much exactly the opposite of it. It's going from one key to the next without having any keys in between. So if we started on the C right here and we wanted to move a half step up or to the right, we would move up to C sharp. So from C to C sharp is a half step. From C to D is a whole step. A whole step leaves one key in between, and a half step leaves no keys in between. So you got to remember that when you're trying to build these piano scales, because each scale is based on a series of different intervals. Now, there's a lot of different types of piano scales that you could learn, but for beginners and for our purposes right now, all we're going to learn about are the two main types of scales. Those are the major scales and the minor scales. So the major piano scales are basically scales that sound happier, more, I guess, upbeat, and minor scales are a little sadder, they're a little darker sometimes. Those are the two main types of scales that you're gonna come across when you're first starting to learn how to play the piano. Now, the major scale, the major piano scale, is you can build it on any one of these keys right here by following a certain series of intervals. The series goes like this: whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. So what does that mean? Basically, you start on any key that you want, and then you just move those intervals. So if it was a whole step, you'd move a whole step. If it's a half step, you'd move a half step. If it's another half step, you'd move a half step. If it's another whole step, you'd move a whole step. Again, a half step is moving from key to key with no keys in between, and a whole step is moving from key to key with one key in between. So if we were going to build a major piano scale on the C note, which is, the middle C right here, we learned about that in the last video about learning piano notes. If we wanted to build the major scale, all we would have to do is follow that formula: whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. So you can remember that by, just writing down the first letter, W or H. A W is a whole step, and H is a half step. So it would be W, W, H, W, 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 H. So let's try it out. We start on the C note, we move a whole step, which would be to D. Then we move another whole step, which would be to E. And then we move a half step, which would be to the F. No keys in between. But then we go back to moving a whole step up to the G, and then we move another whole step up to the A, and we move another whole step up to the B, and then we move a half step up to the octave or the C. And that is the C major scale. So it goes, you start on the C, You move a whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. So the entire scale goes like this. Now you can see all of those notes, they sound good together, and that is the C major scale. So you can basically start on any one of these keys right here and build a major scale by following that formula. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Follow that formula, you can build any major scale. Now the other main type of scale that you're going to come across is called the minor scale. The minor piano scale, as I said, it's a little bit more darker, it's a little bit more sad in tone, and there's a really easy way to turn any major scale into a minor scale, but that's a little bit more of an advanced thing, so you can go and check out mypianolessons.net. There might be a blog post about that there soon in the future. But basically, it does follow sort of similar rules to the major scale. So the pattern of intervals that you use for a minor scale is a little bit different, though. The pattern for minor scales is whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. So the pattern of intervals for moving from key to key for any minor scale is whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. So that's W, H, W, W, H, W, W. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. So if we want to make a C minor scale, like in the last example, we would start on C, right there, and the first step we would make is a whole step, so we'd go C to D. And then the second step we take is a half step, so we go from a D to an E flat, because we already used the D. Now some of you might be saying, well, I thought that was a D sharp if you're moving to the right of the piano. That's true, but in any scale you can only use a letter once. So since we already used the D for this one, we have to use the E for this one, and that one is an E flat. So when you're playing the C minor scale, you start at the C, you move a whole step up to the D, a half step up to the E flat, then you move a whole step up to the F, another whole step up to the G, a half step up to the A flat. Remember, we already used G for this, so this can't be a G sharp, it has to be an A flat. So you move a half step up to the A flat, and then you move a whole step up to the B flat. Remember, we already used the A flat here, so that can't be an A sharp, it has to be a B flat, right? B flat, and then you move another whole step back up to the C. So if we start back at the C again, it's C, a whole step to a D, half step to an E flat, whole step up to an F, another whole step up to the G, a half step up to the A flat, and a whole step up to a B flat, and then another whole step up to the C again, the octave. So the entire C minor scale sounds a little something like this. As you can see, it sounds a little bit darker, a little sadder, a little more serious than the major scale. So no matter what key you start on, if you want to build a scale, either a major scale or a minor scale on the piano or on the keyboard, all you have to do is follow those patterns of intervals, either whole steps or half steps when moving from key to key, and you can build any scale you want. There's basically 12 different scales that you could build on any major scale, and another 12 for any minor scale. So there's 24 scales in total that you could build using each of these keys. But that's basically it. That is how you build a piano scale. If you found this video helpful, click subscribe, because we're going to have more tutorial videos coming up soon, hopefully. And check out mypianolessons.net, because it's basically a blog where we're starting from scratch and we're going to learn how to play the piano like a pro. This is Omar from mypianolessons.net. Thanks a lot for checking out the video. I'll see you in the next one.